Hi there, this is Melissa Schiefelbein. Today we're going to talk about how to avoid meltdowns, the lowdown on the meltdown. So we've all been there before. I'm a parent of a child on the spectrum as well as a board-certified behavior analyst, and I can tell you that I've been in your shoes. When you know that a meltdown is likely to occur, you're just not sure what to do about it. You're not sure how much you can do to prevent it. You're not sure what you should do. And when it's occurring, you're not sure what to do. But hopefully in this video, we're going to talk about some actual practical ways that you can prevent it from even happening in the first place. And if it does happen, how you can learn from it and adapt your strategies to best reflect what your child needs. So step one is to create an emergency action plan, as I call it. A lot of businesses or even schools will have something like this set up. In the event of an emergency or in the event of whatever disaster, what's the action plan? This is why you have fire drills and other things that prepare you for a situation that might be a little difficult to prepare for. A meltdown is really similar, and how you create your emergency action plan is first taking note of what typically happens right before a meltdown occurs. The technical term for this is the antecedent. The antecedent does not mean the cause, like what caused the behavior. It's just what happens right before a meltdown is likely to occur. Sometimes you'll be able to find trends, like there are some things that are always present when a meltdown's about to occur. And the reason I would say that it's not definitely the cause of the meltdown is because we really don't know. There are a lot of variables, there's a lot going on, and there could be internal events. How many times have you had an emotional reaction to something and you're like, I don't even know why I'm feeling this way. You just know that it's happening. It's kind of the same when it comes to a meltdown. It's not any one thing. So really, you just kind of want to underlie what makes for the perfect storm. So you know that a meteorologist is going to know if a tornado is coming, if the conditions are right. It's kind of the same with meltdowns in a way. If the conditions are kind of set up in a way that you know is going to overstimulate the child or is going to set the child off, then a meltdown is likely to occur. So these antecedents are really good for you to know because then you can strategize ahead of time. So once you get consistent data on the antecedents, you can strategize. So for instance, my son would very commonly have meltdowns in response to public restroom hand dryers or anything that made that kind of a noise. I don't know if it was directly the hand dryer that caused the meltdown. I just know that that sound in particular set him off in a way that he was not able to calm himself down. So I could predict that if I was going to go to a certain area that had a sound like that a meltdown was likely to occur. And I could prepare myself for that. So the next step is being prepared. Think ahead of time, what are those antecedents that make a meltdown more likely to occur? Let's go back to those public restrooms, which I hate, by the way. I hate those hand dryers. I don't even like them. The sound is very obnoxious. I understand the need for them, that they save on our carbon footprint. However, they make it really hard to focus and they're just loud. I understand not wanting to be near them. So if you know you're heading for something that easily sets your child off, then how can you easily prepare for that to happen? So if I know I'm going into a public restroom, I know that the hand dryers are there, I can't avoid it, I can't change the environment, then I'm going to have some things in place to prepare him. I'm either going to use a visual with a picture on it that says, hey, we're going into this bathroom, you're going to hear this sound, I'm right here, here are the things that you can do. You can have a talk with your child, you can, depending on where your child's skills are, you can prepare them, or you can just have items that are there to help your child to self-soothe. So if I know that he's going into a public restroom, he doesn't like the sound, great, I have a pair of headphones in my go bag. I can put the headphones on before we even get into the restroom. If it's the fact that there's a lot of visual stimuli going on, there's a lot in the environment, I know that you might need the headphones. You might also need something in your hands to fidget with. whatever it is that you think your child might be able to focus on other than the trigger is good to have in your toolkit. I like to even keep what I call a go bag with me. It's got all kinds of stuff in it that I know is effective for my child to kind of regulate himself. So I've got headphones in there. I've got different things he can hold in his hand, different things he can manipulate. I've got just items that I know are soothing to him. If he has like a certain stuffed animal, he used to take this stuffed Elmo and kind of rub on the tags of the Elmo. I could have Elmo in there. Just anything that I know is going to help my child learn how to regulate himself. I don't always have to jump in and intervene in a lot of situations where I can't. We want to promote that independence. One of the things you also could do is just have a distractor item. This isn't an item that you're like going to say, hey, look over here, don't pay attention to that. But it is something that your child can focus on other than the stimuli that might create the meltdown. So let's go even back to the hand dryers. If I know that the hand dryers are going off, I have headphones. I want to do something to get his mind off of the fact that they're in there in the first place and be focused on what we're in there to do. So I might provide items that help him more successfully go use the bathroom and then come out and wash his hands without even needing to recognize that they're there. So in my mind, these are things like sanitizer. I might have a picture of a toilet like, hey, we're gonna go here. You have your headphones on. Don't even pay attention. Just go do what you're here to do. And then we'll use sanitizer so you can avoid the sink, and then we'll go. So different things to just keep very task oriented and less on the big abstract stimuli around. I want to focus on that last part really quick. We're distracting from the element that is the trigger. We're not directly avoiding it. This is really huge, I feel like, in the ABA and in the autism field, is we don't want to always explicitly avoid triggers. Yes, we want to prepare for them. Yes, we want to make sure our child is equipped to handle them, but there are some things in the environment that just can't be controlled. And if all I'm doing is teaching my son that if there's a hand dryer in a restroom, he doesn't have to go in there, then I'm not doing him the best service that I can be doing, because what happens if there aren't any restrooms that don't have those hand dryers? He's kind of stuck. Or what happens if there's just no other option for going to the bathroom? I have to find that delicate balance of, yes, this is something you don't like. I'm prepared to help you through it, but we can't just not go in there because they're here. I don't want my son to be raised in an element of fear. I want him to have all the tools he has in his toolkit to soothe through it. This is actually one of the core elements of what applied behavioral analysis is. We want a child to learn to soothe independently, or we want them to desensitize to these things that commonly cause triggers, not to normalize them or not to make them behave the same way as everybody else, but to take these things that seem very daunting and seem like they're overwhelming and make them more manageable to them. So for instance, I think of myself. What are the things that you would do on a daily basis to prepare yourself from getting overwhelmed? We do this with each other and ourselves all the time. My main thing is I hate going to the grocery store. I don't like, working my cart through aisles of people. I don't like looking around for things that I might potentially need. I get very distracted by conversations and people around me. So I learned over time, I have to go to the store. I have to learn how to grocery shop. So how can I do that successfully without overstimulating myself? So I'll put in earbuds of my favorite music so I'm not distracted by the people around me. I'll go in with a list of the very specific things that I need, and I'll try to visualize in my mind in the store that I always go into where those things are, so I can quickly get them, check out, and get home. We want the same kind of thing for our kids. We don't want them to always avoid one thing that they're overstimulated by. We want them to learn how to work through it and how to thrive in their own lifestyle without actively avoiding something that could be a trigger. So next thing is how to have a plan when a meltdown happens anyway. Sometimes despite our best efforts, it's still going to happen. We're still going to have some triggers that we can't really avoid, and our child is going to have a meltdown. So in your mind, have a plan for, if this does happen in this environment, what can I do? For my son, I'll go all the way back again to hand dryers. I knew I would be in a public restroom. I knew that the walls and the floors are probably going to be hard. So I need to be ready to block him from any kind of self-injurious behavior, but also maybe give him behaviors that were incompatible with self-injurious behavior. So at one point, if he was engaged in a meltdown, I would sit with him and I would start giving him exercises like, where's your nose? And he'd have to touch his nose. Where's your head? He touches his head. If he's engaging in this with me, even if he is upset through it, he's not using his hands to hit or thrash or do anything like that. Another way that I used incompatible behaviors with my son is if he would start to get escalated, I'd have a social story ready about the topic that would escalate him, and he would read, and as he was reading, he would start to calm down because he couldn't scream and read at the same time. So trying to find things that will help bring the situation down without directly reinforcing it. I want to make the point that our goal here is to soothe, not reinforce, and they're not the same thing. So reinforcement means if a child is engaging in a behavior, you give something that's desired, and then that behavior continues because the child has learned that if I do this one thing, I'm going to get something that I want. So an example of this is your child says, I want a cookie. And you say, no, not right now. You've had too many already. And the child starts to scream and you go, okay, I can't do this anymore. Here's your cookie. That's reinforcement because the child has learned that if I scream, you're going to give me this. But learning to teach your child how to soothe through a meltdown is very different. A meltdown is a situation where your child's not in control. There's no contingency where your child has a trigger, reacts to that trigger, and then anything that you're doing reinforces that reaction. The fight or flight response gets really activated in certain conditions, and it's not up to us to really determine why that happened. What's up to us is to learn to teach the child how to calm themselves down. I would also ultimately watch out for auditory input. Sometimes there are studies that show that sometimes if a child is overwhelmed by auditory stimuli or hearing different sounds, then you adding sounds like your voice or talking is going to only escalate the situation. So watch out for that. If you've seen that your child is triggered by different sounds, then try to take a very nonverbal approach and try to use items or gestures or visuals to guide behavior instead. I like to use preferred items, but you want to make sure that you get calm responding before delivering those items so you don't indirectly reinforce. That's the sneaky thing about soothing versus reinforcement is sometimes if a child is engaged in behavior and you give them something really preferred in that moment, you could indirectly reinforce the behavior. Obviously, that's not the goal. So I would use preferred items and have them ready to go, but wait until calmer responding has been achieved. Try doing some of those incompatible behaviors like, hey, I've got this. Can you say ball? Ball, like having some kind of response that's incompatible with a meltdown. And once the child starts to transition to those calmer responses, bam, now you're ready to go. My biggest piece of advice when preparing for a meltdown or when in the midst of it, block everyone else out. It is not fun for me as a parent to try to de-escalate a meltdown in a public restroom where I know nobody, where I feel all eyes on me. I feel like my palms start to sweat, I'm getting overheated, I'm getting really flustered, and all I want is to just get out of the situation. I understand. However, your child is more important than any person in that room, and a teachable moment to show your child how to successfully de-escalate and how to regulate their own meltdown independently, that's more valuable than the opinion of anybody you're gonna meet in a public restroom. Just block everybody out. Their opinion doesn't matter. What matters is you calmly and effectively helping your child to de-escalate in the best way that you know how. Your mission is to keep your child safe, and your mission is to find out what it is that's commonly coming before this meltdown so you can prepare your child to learn to soothe themselves through it. Bottom line, I like to use the term ditch the normal and join the successful, because what we're trying to do here is we're not trying to get your child to have less characteristics of autism. That's not the goal of any good program, and that's not the goal of Bloom Health specifically. What we do want to do is teach success. We want independent self-regulation, which means we're teaching a child to take these things that we can't change and kind of conquer their own ability to react to it. So if I can do that in my own life by the supermarket example, or by other things that I know I can do to make sure that I'm successful in my endeavors, we would want the same for our kids, no matter where they are in the spectrum, no matter if they're typically developing or not. We want our child to be able to face these things without our intervention. So that's the goal of anything that we put into place when it comes to meltdowns as well. Next is to understand that no plan is foolproof. There's going to need to be adjustments along the way. Some of the things you try are going to work out fantastically, and despite your best efforts, some of the things aren't, and that's okay. As long as you're taking that information and you're not letting it stop you completely, you're just making adjustments along the way of what works best for your child. And finally, consistently update your practices. If you get to a point where you've kind of gone through the meltdown experience enough, you've used several different strategies and tactics, you've found some work better than others, you've got a good plan going, great. Now it's time to fade you out of the picture so your child can do these things on their own. So if you have a go bag or you have items that are successful in getting your child to de-escalate, it's time to start teaching your child to do those on his or her own. The ultimate goal of anything that we put into place is that we want the child to be able to do it independently without us having to constantly intervene, because we want a child to learn independence, not that we're there to help solve every problem, but that we have tools that we can teach them that will help them solve any problem, because they're very capable of doing so. Our kids are able to do way more than we imagine, and our instinct is always to protect them, which is great. But the best way to protect them is teaching them how to protect themselves, how to regulate themselves, and how to de-escalate themselves. If we can teach them that, they are limitless. I hope that this was a very informational video for you. There's not too many specifics because meltdowns can come in all kinds of shapes and forms. But if you need help in determining what's the difference between your everyday tantrum and a meltdown, or you need specific step-by-step instructions on how to utilize some of this advice for your specific situation, book with us at www.bloomhealth.org, and we will definitely set up a consultation for you to put some of these things into practice. Please don't forget to like and subscribe this video, because there will be plenty more like it, and how to increase independence in your child's life. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in the next video.